Hey everyone, welcome back to the arena. I'm MD, joined here by Matt, and once again, an awesome guest that we can't wait to get into.
What's up, guys? We've got another guest here. His name is Lewis Huckstep. Lewis is from, so this is, we've got two guests from Australia. So 8 p.m. here on a Sunday in Chicago, and around 10 or 11 a.m., I believe, in Australia the Monday. So Lewis has already got his Monday started. But Lewis is a mindset coach, and just in looking at some of Lewis's content on Instagram, social media, a lot of it really resonated with me pretty deeply, and so we're super grateful to have Lewis on to kind of share his story and share some of his wisdom that he's gained along the way. So without further ado, Lewis, why don't you just provide a background of like who is Lewis Huckstep?
Thank you, gents, for having me. It's Monday morning. It's 10 minutes to 11 a.m. for me, so kicking into my week, and a great way to start the week. Add some value to you guys, connect with some awesome human beings, and my background. I guess to summarize the story, we can go wherever you guys want to within the story, but was diagnosed with some mental health challenges when I was younger: Aspergers, ADHD, autism, socially anxious. Really struggled with my mental, emotional fitness and strength and mental health. Just didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was very much chasing goals out of insecurities, not out of inspiration. I was always been, quote, a high achiever, where I always wanted to achieve more, I always wanted more, I always wanted to have more, from sports to schooling to finances to relationships. It's just I was in my own way, and I was self-sabotaging. I was not doing the inner work. I was fearful, doubtful, and yeah, it was just taking two steps forward, one step back, and I was able to stress my way to, quote, success, with the fitness industry. That I was my first sort of chapter of business. I opened up 3 studios by the age of 23. We're doing $1 million by that time, or 7 figures in revenue. But I was super stressed out. Like, I wasn't happy. Like, from the outside looking in, I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, you're killing it. You're doing so well." But like, I was super stressed, unfulfilled. I was unhealthy. Ironically, running gyms. I wasn't looking after my health, and I just wasn't happy. I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. I was getting triggered a lot. I was avoiding relationships because I had some shitty beliefs that didn't serve me. And yeah, I was, yeah, just running on low battery mode. And I find that's what a lot of high achievers do when they don't do the inner work. So I was always drawn to coaching. I've always enjoyed it. It's funny. I've had people that would come down to the gym for like a goal setting session for like nutrition and training, and would end up having like these huge life breakthroughs, healing traumas. There was this one in particular. This lady came down to just sign up for the gym. We connected, and 45 minutes later, like, her partner had committed suicide about 6 months earlier, and we healed through that in 45 minutes. And it's like my consult. I was just always drawn to sort of that sort of deeper psychological healing and growth. And yeah, I've consumed a ton of self development. I've done a lot of work on me. I've still got a lot to do. I'm still on my journey like everyone else. And yeah, I'm just building a business and building a brand, being able to impact as many people as I can to help them, to guide them to live a life that inspires them. So that kind of brings me to where I am today.
Thanks, Lewis. I want to jump back to the beginning of your story. You talked about having goals out of insecurities. I'm imagining that those insecurities
I wrote that down too, by the way.
stemmed.
I made note of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a cool alliteration, insecurity versus inspiration. But my question is, can you walk us through beginning stages of what's that language used to deliver your diagnosis, your mental challenge diagnosis? I think is as you phrased it. Um, Ultimately, developing these insecurities, like what exactly was described to you as a kid, and then how did your maybe family play a role around that?
Beautiful question. So, I guess the terminology I was given, or the diagnostics I was given, was Asperger's, ADHD, and ADHD, sorry, and autism. And autism and Asperger's, they're on the same spectrum. They're kind of in the same sort of bucket these days. They've actually relabeled it not too long ago.
And Lewis, really quickly, not to cut you off, but I just want to say you called them your gifts. So maybe
Yeah.
in your answer, touch on that, because I think that's really, really, really interesting and beneficial perspective to have.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Yeah, so look, the strongest force in the human psychology is to stay consistent with how we see ourselves and how we define ourselves. So I'm very, very conscious of wording. That's a lot of my work is following the words that we speak are just signs of what's happening underneath the surface. So I'm very, very conscious of words, of my own words, of my clients' words, of the people that I speak to. And I said that for a reason, and I say that for a reason because back then, before I'd done the work, it was a limitation because I saw myself that way. It was a problem, it was an issue, it held me back. I was socially anxious, I couldn't communicate properly. I had these, quote, problems that I had no control over. And it's just giving your power away to do anything about it. If it's not my fault, it's someone else's fault, they have the power over me. So I guess credit to my family, and I love them so much dearly for this, is they decided not to go, quote, the medication route and just medicate. There's something wrong with you, here's some medication to try and numb the symptoms versus being aware of, okay, well, what does that sort of personality type and patterns show up with, and how can we allow myself, Lewis, to thrive in the best way we can and kind of optimize for the strengths of it by also minimizing the downsides of it as well. So helping me get into uncomfortable situations that I would probably avoid if I had the choice, to also allowing me to explore my strengths, which is a benefit or a gift of my way of thinking. Because ADHD, this is I did a podcast not too long ago on this. Actually, it's not posted yet, it's scheduled. And my definition of ADHD is someone who has a high level of energy and a high sensitivity to boredom. So you will not want to do things you're not that fucking interested in, but you'll be hyper fucking focused on shit you're interested in. You gents, I don't obviously know you two very well, but for running a podcast, it takes a lot of fucking energy, a lot of fucking focus. If you want any success, that requires a lot of energy and input and focus. That's a gift of ADHD. Is there a downside where you'll get distracted by shit you don't really want to do? Of course. You got to delegate, you got to systemize, you got to have discipline, of course. So yeah, and that's the ADHD part. The Asperger's part is I see things in a different way. So I see things that people don't see. So I can do things that people don't do. So I can have things that people don't have. And that is, again a gift of the way I operate and the way I view my life. Are there downsides to it? Of course. I still get a little bit socially anxious when I go to places. Like I went to, I own a studio still. One of those studios I mentioned, I'm in the process of selling one of them. And the last one now. And I went to their little end of challenge party, and I'm not really immersed in the business anymore. I removed myself about 12, 13 months ago, so I don't really know the clients anymore. I kind of do, but I kind of don't. And even driving up to the little celebration, my heart was beating out of my fucking chest. I was like getting quite overwhelmed, like, fuck, there's still some work to do here. So there's still definitely downsides that I'm aware of and I'm healing through, I'm working through, but I'm also aware that everything in life is balanced. Every up has a down, every down has an up. So if you're really strong at numbers, you might be, or structure, you might not be as creative, or you might be really good at being an extrovert, which has its strengths, but introverts has their strengths as well. So again, I use gifts to use it in an empowering way, because if I see it, if you see something is wrong and bad, and you have that thing that's wrong or bad, then you've just given yourself a limitation.
So what's an example of you seeing something differently than somebody else when you were talking about the Asperger's side of it?
Yeah, beautiful question. A very common one, and this is a common trait of Asperger's, is you don't really get humor. So I'm not hard to crack up, but I never really got humor. That's where the social sort of anxiousness comes into it, and the sort of hard to sort of have group conversations because it's anyways, I'll get to the punchline of this story. So I don't really get humor and jokes too much. And if you think from the other way, a lot of people use their pain, insecurities, and limitations as humor to connect with people. I was at my mum's house not too long ago, and Mitch, he won't be watching this, but Mitch, if you listen to this, because I called him out on it. I said, I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. He's one of my brother's best mates. And he's like, we're playing a game of cards. And he just says, like, it was kind of like, there was a bit of an awkward silence. And he broke the silence by, like, just shitting on himself. I'm such a fat, lazy blot. Like, he just said these really brutal things about himself in a joking way, and everyone kind of laughed. And I didn't laugh. I was like, man, you put shit on yourself to connect with others. And he kind of like took back, and he got so that's a prime example. Is like I don't really see humor that well because of my gift that I have. So I've gone to like stand up comedy, and I didn't really laugh the whole time. So that's a downside to it. But I see things that people don't see. Where's the truth in the joke? Is the question I ask. Where's that truth coming from? Why do you bring that up? So that's one example. I'm very conscious of tonality and vocal tension. I was playing I was hanging a good friend of mine, Savannah. She might listen to this. Savvy K, if you're listening to this, and we're just in conversation. We're just talking, and I'm very, very conscious of the tonality and the vocal tension and how people speak. And she said something about her brother, and she was just like, "My brother never," and she like had this big sort of like peak with like never, and I could feel judgment in there. I said, Sav, do you have judgment towards your brother? Like, is there something you haven't healed through with your brother when it comes to this topic? And she kind of stood back. She's like, oh, shit, yes, I am. And depending where we take this podcast, whenever there's judgment, you're recreating that judgment because you're attracting it back into your life. If I say, don't look for the yellow bus, you're thinking of it, you're aware of it, you're attracting it, and you whatever you put out is what you get back. So that's where the thing that you're holding on to is the thing that's weighing you down. So that's where the healing, the dissolving, the forgiving, the letting go is so important when it comes to, I guess, inner work and unlocking your full potential. So they're two examples.
So Lewis, as it relates to like Aspergers in ADHD, you had mentioned there was a point in your life where you had maybe a different mentality than you do now. Like, was that shaped from friends? Did you have to deal with any bullying or being looked at, quote unquote, differently? And then was there a point at which it kind of clicked for you? Because obviously you don't think the way you used to now. So how did you get to kind of where you are now? Was it therapy? Like what helped you kind of work through those things?
Yeah, beautiful questions, guys. So look, it was definitely challenging because everyone is doing the best of what they've got. And my 7-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old, 18-year-old version of myself was doing the best with what he had back then. So it was definitely challenging, definitely bullying, definitely never fitting in, not understanding social cues, struggling to connect with friends. I always felt left out, always felt alienated, which is not other people's stuff, that's my stuff.
Were you ever in those moments, were you ever deploying some of that self-deprecating humor or trying to find connectivity?
I'm going to say generally no, but we all express all traits, so I would say I would at some point. I wouldn't say it's a common sort of coping mechanism that I've used. I'm more of a avoidant. I'm more of a disconnection. I'm more of a disassociation. So loner, spend time with myself. Like if I don't really get along with a group, this is a downside and upside to something. Like if I don't really enjoy a conversation or a group of people, I just leave. I just walk away. I'm like, this is shit. I'm out of here. And it's like so. So to answer your question, I don't commonly do it, but I know for a fact it would have happened at some point in some time in my life because I know we all express all traits somewhere. Yeah, sorry, I forgot the first question. What was it?
The first part was more just around, like, to your point on being bullied and how that affected you, but also then getting to a point where you have the mentality you do now, and what different tools helped you get there.
Oh, beautiful question. Yeah, so, and you mentioned something like therapy. I personally never did, quote, traditional therapy. I am a fan of it. There are downsides to it, and we can maybe speak about that if you want to, but I guess I found my growth and my power through self-development. Through Tony Robbins was the initial mentor that I was introduced to, and I just consumed all his YouTube videos, went to his seminars, attended some of his events 3 times. So Tony was a huge mentor for me. I guess, quote, not traditional education like therapy and counseling. It was self-development, like people like Tony Robbins, people like Joe Dispenza, people like Peter Crone, people like Dr. John DeMartini, Nicole LaPria, Sarah Woodhouse, Wayne Dyer, and Kerwin Ray's. He's more of a sort of business mentor for me, but just the self-development, personal development. Obviously, this podcast would fit into that. It's like just self-development, healing, learning tools and strategies and beliefs and frameworks of how I can rewire myself literally. That's where I've gained 90, obviously real life experience as well. Obviously you go through life and you get to learn as you go as well. So yeah, self-development is where I've got majority of my tools and strategies, plus obviously my own personal experience.
So let's move on a little bit as it relates to your life. You mentioned you're 23. On the outside looking in, you're extremely successful. You're doing very well financially, which is, objectively true. But I think you said in one of your videos that you were miserable. Despite all this, you're miserable. I would just love for you to kind of elaborate on your journey there and that point in your life and what makes you say that.
Yeah, beautiful, guys. I love the questions, by the way. They're really cool. So, I use this quote a fair bit: is don't become so broke all that you have is money, and that really stems from people having the addiction to accumulation. Because when we come into this world, this is very Wayne Dyer. If anyone wants to go down his rabbit hole, it's we come into this world with nothing, and we leave this world with nothing, and in between those two periods is we develop an ego, a personality, a persona, a mask, a character of who we need to be successful, which is all a illusion, and it's not true. It's a mirage that you never arrive at, where I'll be happy once I have the $1 million, and then you get it, and then you're like, okay, it wasn't a million because it doesn't really hit the spot. It's not a million, it's 10 million, and then you go again and you hit it, not fulfilled, you go again, and it's just a never-ending pursuit of a mirage that you never arrive at. And before doing a lot of the work, that was me. I was driven out of those insecurities. Like, I thought the status, the achievement, the money, the car, the whatever it may be, the gyms for me would help me feel better about myself. I literally had 3 times gym owner at 23 on my Instagram bio just to stroke my ego a little bit and try to feel good about myself. And it works until it doesn't. Like, it feels good. It's the short-term gratification, and it's like eating the chocolate feels good until it doesn't, and then you have the consequences of that. And it's just to be able to go from that to, I guess, the other side of the bridge is to be able to understand purpose, what is actually meaningful to you, learning to detach and learning to understand that there is not a single thing externally that adds value to who you are. It's a measuring stick for the commercial reality that we live in, where if like you make more money, your business is better subjectively, and I like that you used that before. But in reality of like, does that add any value and worth to who you are as an individual? It absolutely fucking doesn't. You've met people, or you guys may or may not have met people, or you've at least heard of people that have so much money they're fucking miserable. I made a video not too long ago, it might be the same one that you're referring to, about Robin Williams. Like, he had $50 million of net worth when he took his own life. And there's obviously a big can of worms here. There's so much more to this little story, but it's like he made everyone else happy but him. It's like he had the money. So if money was the success, how come he did what he did? There's more to it. I obviously never met the man. I didn't have that opportunity. But if I had the opportunity, I'd love to ask the questions that I ask my clients. Like, what are your values? What is your purpose? What determines your own worth? And being able to see that by being your truest version, authentic version of who you are, one, you're going to be the best version of yourself. You're going to achieve more, but you're going to be fucking happy at the same time. And I just find, I filmed a reel this morning actually on this. I find some people kind of sit kind of one end or the other of, you're going to be super financially fucking successful, money, cars, houses, women, whatever it may be. And you're kind of like that sort of like evil guy with all the money, like, and that's who you are. You're very unbalanced. Or you're on the other side where you're kind of spiritual, levitating, got no money, but super at peace, and you're in the stars with the fairies. And I believe it's a blend of the two, and I believe you can have a spiritual expression of your business, a thriving, purpose-led business, and be fucking happy at the same time. And it's just about intertwining both of those together. And that, I guess, is the majority of the work that I do. So yeah, that's being able to learn the second part and not just go goals, achieve, and trying to think that's going to make me happy, to actually balance my values, understand my purpose, understand my vision, work on my shit, heal through my stuff, rewire the beliefs that don't serve me, and do well financially. Because it's not about getting to a point where you are whole and spiritual and full exactly where you are. That's true, but then don't do anything with your life. I believe actually have goals that are meaningful to you, but chase them out of inspiration, not insecurities, like I said earlier. And it's just finding that happy balance. That's, yeah.
Yeah, when you started talking about achievements and growing from 1 million to 10 million, and that's not fulfilling you, Matt and I talk about this often. I've gone down this rabbit hole a number of different times, and I've taken a step back, and I'm like, no, I don't want to be the richest in the world. But then I like the way you described it as like our commercial reality, right? And then you think about, well, then there's football players getting Super Bowl trophies and actors and musicians getting, Oscars and Grammys, and then, on the other hand, you're saying, well, go and strive for an achievement, go and strive for a goal, right? But when I go down this rabbit hole, I look around and I'm like, okay, well, anything external ultimately means nothing then? Or then how do you arrive at a sense of purpose with that mentality? So how do you reconcile, you come in with nothing, you leave with nothing, so anything external means nothing. How do you reconcile that point of view with also having a tangible sense of purpose?
I love that. Great question, my man. That's beautiful. So it's the most powerful place to get to in life, in my opinion, anyways, is to know exactly what you're inspired to have and you want to go pursue and you want to go kick some goals and you want to achieve and be totally okay never having it. And when you get to that point and you're not attached to the outcome because it's not going to matter anyways. Like, I'm sure you guys know Alex Hormozy and Layla Hormozy.
Mm-hmm.
Alex talks about this quite frequently. I love the analogy that he does, the casino of life, how you're at the casino of life, and depending on the cards that you're dealt and how you play those cards, you're going to accumulate a certain amount of chips, and the chips are cars, money, success, trophies, accolades, whatever it may be. But for 100% of people playing this game, the Grim Reaper will tap you on the shoulder. You can't take your chips with you. You must push it back into the middle and it gets redistributed to the rest of the people that are playing the game. And in 1,000 years or a long enough time horizon, no one's going to remember who we are. Maybe with technology and records now, maybe, until we colonize Mars and the world gets blown up. But it's like eventually over a long enough time horizon, like people will not remember us. So to answer that question, it's for me, it's get clear on purpose, mission, vision, values, and the vision's like, what's your life look like the next 5 to 10 years? You can go further if you want to. What's the vision? What's your fuel behind getting it, which is the inspiration or the insecurity? And then, but be okay not having it. And it's just visually a good exercise for people to do is visualize the thing that you are craving the most, whether it's the goal, like for me, it was the gyms, money, cars, status, achievement, and picture and really feel that you can never have it and actually be okay with that. And from that place of not being attached to it, what becomes available to you? What emotions come to you? It'll probably be a lot more ease because you're not so fucking tense and stressed about having to achieve it. And that energy, the energetics of that, it just flows. Life doesn't have to be like a business. I guess the achieving part of life doesn't have to be the way that I did it initially, where it's just so fucking grind and grind. I'm not exaggerating, gents. I remember I've got screenshots. And I'm doing a webinar that has the screenshots there. I would wake up at 3:30, 3:45 a.m., go to the gym, run classes, work throughout the day, try get a nap in if I can, but I rarely did. I wouldn't eat any food because I didn't have much money for food back then. And I would take all the classes. We wrap at about 9 p.m. So I finish at 9, drive home, get McDonald's on the way home, and just smash all these calories at once. So I was saying I wasn't very healthy back then, and I was running gyms. And I'd get home, get to bed around sort of 10 o'clock, get to bed hopefully by 10:30, sleep, I say nap for about 4 to 5 hours, wake up and go again. I did that for about 6 years. It was fucking exhausting because I was so attached and needy of the achievement versus like, look, this is what I'm inspired to have, and I want to achieve these goals, but I'm actually not needy of it.
And what was the end goal? Where were you trying to get to?
50 gyms. That was the goal. And
how did you set at 50? Like how did you come up with the number 50?
To be honest with you, my Nicole, who's a beautiful friend of mine, she owns a different studio now, but we kind of came into business, our journeys together, or relatively similar times, and she had a goal of doing, I think it was like 30 or 40. I just wanted to do more of it because it was out of ego, right? And it was out of insecurity. So it was just a number out of my ass. It's like it didn't matter. It was just like, what's a big number that I can strive for? And I guess, yes, all of our goals at its basic level are the same as what I just said. But again, what's the fuel behind it? That's the question I just always ask.
Was there an underlying value with that pursuit? Like, we understand the goal's 50 gyms owned, but maybe sometimes you have some of the pieces together. Like, was there still an underlying value driving the motivation?
Value as in like commercial value, or like values as an individual?
I value money, and 50 gyms is a means to financial success. I value helping the obesity epidemic, let's say, and creating gyms is my impact against obesity. Like, was there a value that was driving you to that goal?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, beautiful question. So, look, I believe that we are always living out our values, even if you're not aware of it. And like, this is a line I use a lot. Low self-worth is feedback that you're not in alignment with what your values are. So if you're feeling guilty, doubting yourself, lacking self-worth, beating yourself up, not feeling full, you're not prioritizing what your values are. So the answer to your question, yeah, health is a value of mine, wealth is a value of mine still, and that was the vehicle. It's just the wrong vehicle. And again, the fuel behind it was not so much inspiration. It was more so the ego, and more so stroke the ego and feel good about myself. But definitely there was a part of it. And to balance this out, I had a good time. Like, I was having fun. Like, we were changing lives. We're getting epic testimonials, packing out classes. Like, every night was like a party at the gym. We'd have we started with a couple sessions a day, built up to about 6 sessions a day, and you'd get average like 40 people a class. It was a fucking party. Like, we were having fun. Like, I know I'm painting a bit of a like really dark hustle period, which there was that part of it, but it was a lot of fun. Like, we definitely enjoyed ourselves. I was learning a lot. I got, obviously, like I said, into the self-development. I was doing Kerr and Ray. I was doing Tony Robbins events, reading books, getting mentorship. So I was.
And is that how you got to where you are today as a coach? As more of on the psychological side, is you were talking to people in gyms and then realizing, like, wait, I actually like having these conversations and working through things with people more than I do. While I may enjoy getting someone to reach their fitness goals, I actually am feeling fulfilled by doing this other thing. Is that kind of how that journey like transpired?
Spot on, man. Yeah, really spot on. You pretty much nailed it. If I was to go a little bit deeper on that, it would be that your intuition and your spirit and your purpose is always whispering to you. Like most people, if they actually gave themselves the time to sit with themselves, and whether it's meditation or journaling or just sit down and fucking think, like most people, because your purpose is not something you find outside. It's obviously something that's within, that you uncover and release and express. But if you just listen to that voice of what you're inspired to do, what are you drawn to do, what would you be inspired to do, what would you love to do, and you just listen to that voice enough, it becomes louder and louder and more clearer, then that's the purpose. So it was, to your question, those were like the signs and the breadcrumbs that the universe was leaving me, and I was just starting to become more aware of it. I was obviously working on myself. I really lacked self-worth and confidence, especially when I started my journey, so I was very much like a yes man. Like, a lot of those goals weren't my goals, they were other people's goals. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that, 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 versus, hang on, what's actually meaningful to me? What would be the best decision for me to move towards my vision? I wasn't asking myself those questions. I was like, yeah, that sounds sick, let's do that, let's do that, let's do that. Which obviously got me started, but yeah, it was just listening to my intuition, following what inspires me. If people just listen to their intuition, follow what inspires them the most, and learn from a mentor to help them get there faster, most people are going to live a pretty cool life.
What are Lewis? What is your purpose? We've talked a lot about this, and what are your values, and kind of how did you identify them? Talk us through that process.
Beautiful. I do values first. For anyone to want to sort of go down this rabbit hole, I have a free podcast. It's episode 200, and it's a free training on determining your values. Values are not. People have a misperception on values, and from the way I view them anyways, is people say things like, I value honesty, I value loyalty, I value freedom. I love freedom. Freedom's funny. I say, okay, well, if you had ultimate time and financial freedom, what would you do? And they'll say travel, so they value experiences. They'll say go to the gym because they value health. They'll say hang out with their family because they value their family. Those are the values. People say honesty. Honesty is a character trait. Because I'll use you, gents, as an example. Gents, do you guys both see yourselves as someone who value honesty?
I will say I value authenticity, or in my perception, yes, I value authenticity in my relationships with myself. More importantly,
I hold it in high regard, the character trait of honesty. I don't know if I should say it's a value of mine, because like I think you said, our behaviors should be congruent with that, and I think we'd be lying to ourselves if we all admitted that we were fully honest all the time. So I value honesty as a trait.
Beautiful. Now you both worded it really, really well. Because then the next question is, when's the last time you lied, or have you lied before? And everyone's lied. Everyone's been inauthentic, uncongruent. So you actually answered that really well, my man. So, and that kind of hits the point home. It's like, that's a character trait, not in what I say a value. A value is an area of life that is important to you intrinsically. So for my values, to answer your question, are coaching, and you can see what I do. Learning, I love learning. Wealth, relationships, health, and friends. So when I say relationship, that's an intimate relationship, and friends are friendships. And you can categorize them different. It's hard to, like, that. It's an hour conversation to teach it properly, but it's what areas of your life are intrinsically most important to you. You think about them, you talk about them, you spend money on them, you put focus into them, you visualize about them. It's like in social settings, if you say, hey, how's your family going? That person who asked the question values family. How's your business going? Value business. How's your wealth going? How's your investments going? What are you learning at the moment? Like, you talk about your values. You don't say, how honest have you been lately? Like, no one really does that, right? So those are values. My purpose is to heal and raise the consciousness of the world. So your purpose is an expression of your highest value. We all have many purposes. I have a purpose of being a great father, of being a great friend, of being a role model with my health, to learn from the greatest coaches and mentors on the planet. But your highest purpose is an expression of your highest value. So coaching is my highest value. To heal and raise the consciousness of the world is my purpose. And then you have mission. The mission is a 5 to 10 year goal, which is derived from that purpose. Your vision is, what does life look like once you've hit the mission? And then you break that down into goals. What do you do in the next 12 months, next quarter, next month, next week? And what are you doing today? And then you have all the mindset components, the limiting beliefs, the healing, the regulation, the emotional intelligence that allows you to handle the shit that life's going to throw at you as you pursue that purpose. That's kind of my work in a nutshell, by the way.
And so, to understand your perspective, purpose is at the individual level, meaning that there is no one singular purpose of life, for example, but there is your purpose versus my purpose versus Matt's purpose, and ultimately we elect that for ourselves depending on what we value at the highest.
Beautiful. You guys have got some great questions. It's really good. So, look, my view on that, I haven't really been asked this publicly, but my view on that is, we as a consciousness have a purpose, as a humanity, as a species. The purpose of humanity is to evolve. And then individually, we play a role within that purpose. So you can see my purpose is to raise the consciousness and heal the consciousness of the world. That's me helping humanity evolve. Some people might be to help people with their finances, to help them with their relationships, to help them with their self-worth, to help them with their I don't know, whatever it may be.
Real quick, what I'm hearing is the key word is to help. Is whatever is you started everything by saying to help. So we had someone on a prior guest, and we asked him his purpose, and he said, in his opinion, everyone's purpose is to serve. And how you do that can come at an individual level in different ways. Is that because I'm seeing some similarities there between how you're describing it and how he's describing it.
Yeah, for sure. Like, what's greater for the whole is greater for the individual. I'm just reading Ray Dalio's Principles. That's just triggered me from there. So everyone's purpose, for me, again, the healthy embodied version is going to be something that contributes to the whole of humanity. If someone's going out and killing people, there's obviously something going wrong inside their heart and head for someone to go do that, right? And that is not helping humanity evolve, in my opinion. Like, for someone to be doing, quote, negative, toxic, destructive things, I would assert and assume that that person has some unhealed shit and some daddy issues, mummy issues, childhood shit that is showing up and getting them to do that out of the insecurity, out of the hurt, out of the fear, out of the whatever. Once that's healed and they were, quote, their most truest, authentic, healed version of themselves, I would assume they wouldn't be doing that toxic, destructive shit. So the embodied expression of who we are, the healthy, healed version of what we are, And just a side note to that, you're never fully healed. You've always got work to do. We're always healing and evolving and becoming the best version of ourselves. But yeah, so to back to your point, yes, I believe that what's greater for the whole is greater for the individual. So our purpose will be to help the whole of humanity evolve. And then in what way do you do it? Your purpose, and to take an extra layer on this, your values come from your biggest voids, pains, and wounds that you had in your upbringing. So if you come back to my full circle of my story, I struggled with my emotions. I struggled with my consciousness. I was a very emotional kid. I couldn't communicate really well. I didn't know my direction. I struggled with my consciousness. That was my biggest pain point. So that's my biggest expression. So whatever... my second value was learning, if you were following along, and I struggled at school. I was in the learning disabled, literally that's what they call it, right? The learning disabled classes. I was the last kid in my whole grade to get their pen license. I don't know if you do that in your country. At high school, you get or primary school, you get a pen license. You go from pencils to pens. I
No,
just struggled.
we don't have that.
That's Australia education for you. My handwriting's still pretty shit. It's still pretty rubbish. But that was painful to me. It's important to me. So this was a huge light bulb for me.
Yeah,
Whenever
that's...
you,
Oh,
sorry,
no, go ahead, please.
I was just gonna say whenever you have tears of inspiration, you are having or experiencing something that is aligned with your biggest or core purpose. So whenever you get tears of just, I feel inspired by whatever I'm doing or whatever I'm experiencing, whatever I'm seeing, and you have tears of inspiration, you're perceiving something to do with your purpose. And if you connect those dots and you can actually piece it together and find those common threads and do the inner work, and they all kind of plug into each other, you'll get a lot clearer on what your purpose is, and then find a way to express that at the highest level, whether it's a business, whether it's you work for a company that puts you in a role that allows you to do that. Because when what you do is the fullest expression of who you are, you will do your life's best work.
I want to draw back on the values stemming from the place where you faced most problem or pain in your upbringing. I have a story to tell and a question towards the end there. I grew up with a friend, and we were really young when this friend told me that their value was to become, or their goal really, and behind the value of financial success was to become the richest person in the world. And, at the time, I didn't make anything of it. And then as of recently, I'm talking almost 15 years later, my friend and I, we were able to unpack this, that, they grew up in an environment where their parents had a lot of problems in their marriage because of financial problems. And there you go. And so from there, they developed this value of money, and they wanted to make sure that whenever they got married, whenever they had that intimate relationship, that if any problems were going to exist, it was not going to be money. My question to you is, when you're coaching somebody and they let you know that what their values are, is that truly their values, or is that influenced by extenuating problematic circumstances of their upbringing? Is that fair to them to then say that this is my value? I'm a product of an environment that caused problem and pain, and from there I've derived my values. Is there a deeper level of, had you not gone through that, maybe your values would be a little bit different? Is there consideration for that?
No, I think there was some truth, and when I say some truth, some of the truth that I see anyways, to what you just said. I think there was a little bit of crossover. So to sort of reframe that the way that I would speak that back, is your greatest pain. So if you've probably heard the quotes, your greatest pain is your greatest purpose, your greatest wounds is your greatest wisdom once you've healed through it. So the pains we do go through are the gifts that we're given. That's why I was saying the mental health things were the gifts. So my third value is wealth. So I relate fucking wholeheartedly with what you were just speaking about. I had sometimes no food to take to school. We had no food. I went to school with no food because we didn't have enough money. We have this thing called State of Origin. It's the biggest sort of rugby match in Australia. Not definitely not as big as your sports in your country, but it's quite big in Australia. And I remember the day or the night it was on, me, my dad, and my brother were digging through our couch to find coins to pay the $2 fee to get into the bar to watch the game. We had a lot of pain around money. My parents were fighting all the time. I've got mental scars and wounds that I've healed through, of them verbally, very viciously, verbally, emotionally fighting because of money. So that pain is my purpose, not my biggest one because it's not my biggest wound, but that is the gift. So I actually say what you said is right. I just think there's a little crossover. Like, is it right for? Is it? You kind of like said, like, is it fair that someone else's pain has influenced your values? I think that's actually exactly the way it does happen. Your biggest pains become your greatest purpose. Your biggest wounds become your greatest wisdom. It's been able to heal through it first, though, and that's why I would say you've got to. If I have an open cut on my arm right now, if I touch it, it's going to shock you, right? And you know people that are like that. They're easily triggered. They get set off all the time. They're very emotionally volatile. Sorry, my camera's kind of zoomed out. It's because they haven't healed the wound. Once you've healed it, you have the strength and the purpose that has come from that pain. So I'd actually say that thing, the pain of the wealth of this person that you're referring to, the pain of the wealth has driven, I think it's a guy, I think you said him, has driven him to be good with his finances. And I relate to that because that's my third value. The pain of having no money has driven me to look after my money. So I'm grateful that my parents had the pain with their money because I wouldn't be as good with my money if they weren't. Imagine if we had all the money in the world and we didn't respect money, we just blew it. Would I have the financial discipline and growth that I have in money now? Because if that was my life, probably not. How many people do you hear, like celebrities, have all this fucking money in the world, they end up in fucking drugs. They end up in rehab because they didn't value money. They didn't have to work for it. So, I agree with actually the way that you've said it. I don't think there's anything, quote, wrong because life has happened exactly the way it's meant to happen because it's what's happened. Like, what has happened is exactly the way it was meant to happen because it's what's happened. And those pains are the seeds that were planted in your childhood that will sprout later on once you've healed them. So yeah, I don't know if that sort of answers.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. And I think that's probably why you say, I read it as well, your trauma is your greatest gift.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that you didn't have that perspective until you were fully healed. And I only say that because I speak for myself personally. Like, you know, we've gotten to know each other very well yet, but, you know, my sexuality was what I struggled with for my whole life. And it was like the biggest place of shame, and I hated it. I hated myself, you know, for everything. Now I'm grateful. I view it as a gift because it's allowed me to really just see life in a beautiful way and kind of understand. I feel like that's where my purpose comes from, is through that pain, through that mental health suffering. And I think there's still more work to do, but I really resonate very deeply with what you're saying around that. And I'm assuming, my guess is that's kind of the trajectory that you followed as well. Like, I'm assuming there's a point in your life where you're like, why am I this way? Why do I have to have ADHD? Why do I have to have Aspergers? Whatever it might be.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and I want to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing about that stuff, man. That's empowering, man, and that's the strength. That's where those were the seeds that were planted for you, and you've obviously done a lot of work. And just to again, I'm very conscious of words, like you said. For me, like, fully healed, I'm not fully healed. No one is ever fully healed. I know you might have just misspoke then, but for someone to think they're fully healed, I think it's funny because a trigger reveals a trauma or a wound that hasn't been healed through. Show me a single person that never gets triggered. Show me. Never. Like, you will.
Sorry if I said that. Yeah, no. Like, I'll say it today. My while I've done a lot of work on myself, like, that piece of me is still my biggest insecurity, and probably, if I had to guess, always will be. So my point being, no, I misspoke then. I don't, you know, I've definitely healed. I've come a long way. Don't get me wrong, and I'm proud of.
So, but that insecurity, are you able to then tie it to now? So that was, let's call it, the biggest pain in your life. Do you follow the same track here? Like, have you derived values and, like, when you see insecurities of other people now, do you have, like, an inclination to coach them out of it? And, like, is that, I know you've talked about how your purpose now is to start serving or helping other people. Is it derived in a similar track?
Absolutely. I mean, again, I see a lot of myself and other people now. You know, because I've done the work on myself, and again, for probably for different reasons. But I think from someone who's done the work on themselves, it's pretty easy to see insecurities because you've gone down there yourself, and so I know what it feels like firsthand. And so yes, and that's part of the reason we started this podcast, is because I think to your point, Lewis, or what you probably will say is you can't really force people to change. People have to want to change themselves, but what you can do is kind of try to be a catalyst for that. And the one way I can do that is through having these conversations and being open and being vulnerable. And that's why I said like one of my values is authenticity, and maybe that's more a trait, but where I would say it shows up is relationships. Maybe relationships are a value of mine, and I highly prioritize authentic relationships because most importantly myself, because I was not authentic to myself for basically my whole life. And if there's anyone where I feel, again, this is a me thing, that I can't be my authentic self, it's not a place I will put myself in, and it's not someone that I want to be around. So I think that's kind of come full circle. Like, yes, it has totally shaped my kind of outlook on life now.
Beautiful, man. And was relationships painful for you growing up?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember talking to my therapist, and I said, like, I admire my sisters and I have twin sisters who are best friends, and they've got two roommates who are all best friends. And I said, like, I admire their relationship because they're so open with each other, and I can just tell they love each other for who they are, and love each other unconditionally to an extent. And for me, it's like I have all these quote unquote friendships, and I've got a bunch of them, but none of them feel real because no one knows who I am. No one really knows who I am. I don't really even know who these people are. And so now I have, through kind of some of my self-healing, I've built what I feel like are real, genuine connections with people by being open myself, leading with vulnerability. And then when I hear, in response, wow, I respect you more because you told me this, or I'm proud of you for this. I mean, it's super empowering. And then it also, in turn, it makes the other people feel like it's a safe space. And then they kind of share, if there's something on their mind. And then that's, to me, how real connection is formed. And I was unable to do that because I wasn't authentic to myself.
Yeah. And did that pain drive you to be able to help other people with it?
Absolutely. That's why we're having this conversation. That's why I'm looking. I think I want to start doing some life coaching on the side. I mean, that's driven it all because I know what it's like to struggle with your mental health for a prolonged period of time and feel like you have no out, feel like you have no one to talk to, feel like there's no one there for you. And I also know what it feels like now to have some clarity and have a purpose and have people that love me for who I am. And it's like that is in everyone's power. But it's a choice, and so I want to help people get to that, and so they can make that choice for themselves.
That's powerful, man. Like, there's so much in there, man. And without, just for obviously time today, something that I'll just encourage for everyone listening, and obviously yourself for this topic, is wherever there's, so healing, another way that you can just word it so you can maybe remove some of the sort of friction or resistance towards it. You can just substitute trauma, hurt, pain, or whatever it may be, with the word judgment, because that's all it is. It's just high levels of it. It was really wrong. It was really fucked up. It shouldn't have happened, or whatever it may be. So for an exercise that I get my clients to do quite frequently is find where do you still hold judgment in your life, whether it's towards someone or something or whatever it may be. And then there's a process we go through where we dissolve that judgment. And then in the dissolving of the judgment, that's where the growth, the light bulbs, the healing, the letting go, the evolving comes from. So again, might not do it today on the podcast, but for you, that's the questions I'd be asking. Where in your life have you experienced high levels of judgment or pain when it comes to, for you, relationships? And you'd find that moment of time and when and where it happened. And then there's a set of questions we go through about how to identify what specifically was painful or wrong or hurt or shouldn't have happened or whatever the judgment is. And then we dissolve that into love. Or sorry, not dissolve that into love. We dissolve it. And then as a byproduct of that, you are more loving, you heal more, you grow more. And through some of the sessions I do, like, people look 5 years younger after just one session because they're just all this emotional like charge. Because a lot of us, as you guys know, and people listening, is we're carrying around the emotions of the hurt from 20 years ago, from 30 years ago, from 10 years ago. And all it is untranscended love, because that's all life is. That's all the emotions we have. If you look at a baby that's not in fight or flight, so a baby that's not super scared because they're in fight or flight or going to the bathroom or eating food, which is all survival sort of instincts, a baby is not depressed. A baby is not anxious. A baby is not overwhelmed. It doesn't care about how much money it's in a bank account, right? It's grateful, loving, and curious, and that's who we are as human beings. It's just the ego that sort of gets in the way. So when you can dissolve it and transcend that into love, we let go of that and we grow, we elevate. So yeah, just something for yourself, man, and for people listening is ask yourself, where is the judgment? Where is the hurt? Who would I not want to hang around? Who pushes my button? Who has wronged me? Who would I not want to hang around, sorry. And if you can find those moments and those people and you dissolve it going through a process that I can help people with and I help people with all the time, it's very fucking enlightening and it's very fucking empowering. But thank you for sharing, man. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is a great conversation. It sounds like understanding one's values isn't as easy or as apparent as it ought to be. It sounds like you have to actually work through it. I've been reading the book, The School of Life. I don't know if you've read this, but it's The School of Life and Emotional Education. And it speaks to like levels of consciousness. And when there's something like a painful part of you, the lowest state of consciousness you have is shame. And when you work through that shame, it gets to guilt and then apathy, grief, fear, desire, and then anger. Anger is actually a catalyst to then propel you into more of like the positive levels of consciousness, which then, become pride, courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance. And it sounds like once you get to like acceptance and then there becomes like inner wisdom, inner openness and oneness and whatnot, when you get to a state of gratitude, and Matt's talked about this, which is like really all connecting the dots. I think this conversation is doing a really good job of connecting dots here. It's like once you've gotten to that state of gratitude, working all the way back from shame, it's from there you've developed a value. And maybe even if that's your highest value, a sense of purpose. And so it's been really enlightening for me to sit here and have you really break that down for me by how you talked about values and purpose. And I wanted to impart that, maybe get your thoughts on that.
No, I think it's absolutely spot on, man. And I guess similar to the conversation I was just having with Matt about the relationship side of things, that's for everything. And that happens, and again, obviously I don't know you gentlemen too much, but that might be Matt's highest value, I don't know, but it would certainly be in there somewhere, at least in the top 5, I would assume. But you apply that for everything. Like you might have judgment towards your sister, towards your brother, towards your mum, towards your dad, towards your teacher, towards the guy that cut you off in traffic, to your old business partner. Like whenever there's any negative emotion, obviously guilt and shame are quite towards the lower rung of those emotions. I just put them into negative and positive, and just anything outside of gratitude. Anything outside of gratitude, there's some dissolving to do. The more extreme the emotion, the bigger the release. So if there's like, I fucking hate this person, they're the worst fucking person ever, they fucked me over, they did this, blah, 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 blah. There's obviously a lot of emotional charge towards that, and that's fucking exhausting, right? You're investing all of that energy and pent up energy into this person or this past experience. That's exhausting. So that would be a big release that this person would have versus like someone annoys you a little bit and this kid said something at school and they're quite annoying. Like there's still a little bit of judgment there, but it's not that quite bad. It won't do too much to you. But yeah, I apply it across the board. Obviously, the bigger the judgment, the higher the charge, the higher the pain, the higher the value it will be. And therefore, the greater the healing opportunity that there is within it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think about myself and like telling my sisters for the first time, and like I just remember just bawling my eyes out as I'm just typing. Like I hadn't even, and it's sending a text message. It's not even speaking it out loud, and it's just this huge, just overwhelming amount of emotion. So I totally resonate with that. I mean, Lewis, do you learn about yourself through your conversations with your clients? How are you still? I mean, obviously, I think you're big into self-development. You listed off a host of names, some of which I knew, some of which I didn't. But like, are you still learning about yourself through these conversations with people?
Man, absolutely. Like, I do a fair bit of content on relationships, and the reason I do that is they're the biggest mirror that you will have because they just see you more than I would assume anyone. Especially you get older, and like I'm not sure if you've seen these graphs. It's like the graph of the amount of time you spend with like friends early in your life, and then towards the end of life it really drops down. And it does it for family, does it for friends, for colleagues, for everything. And the one that shoots up the most is your relationship, because they're the person that you spend more and more time on as you get older and older. So they're going to see more sides to you when you're stressed, when you haven't slept well, when you're overwhelmed, when you're just feeling fucking off, when you've had shit food, when you've got a stomach bug. They're going to see you in so many forms. They're going to shine light and trigger all of those parts that you haven't healed through. The reason I'm sharing this is my partner definitely, I guess, teaches me the most and helps me to heal the most, because she just shines light on me. Whenever I get triggered, because we're aware of it and we hold each other accountable in a healthy way, she brings it to the surface. I'm like, fuck, there is judgment there. Fuck, there is something there. Shit, I haven't healed through that yet. So she would be my biggest mirror and teacher. Whatever triggers you the most will heal you the most. Your greatest triggers in life are your greatest teachers and healers in life. So I'd say my beautiful fiance George will be playing that role the most. I do with my clients. I definitely, as I'm sure coaches have experienced sometimes when you're giving advice to a client, you're like, fuck, I should listen to this a little bit more myself as well. You're like, fuck, it's I'm gonna take my own advice on this one. So I definitely do that quite frequently, which is awesome. I obviously invest into coaching consistently. I just invested into a Reiki master. So I'm going down the energetic healing route, and I haven't been down that route yet. So I'm excited to see what sort of comes up and what happens, because it's not my sort of domain and it's not my style, quote, style of I don't do that for others is what I mean by that. That's not my teaching style, but I know, well, from what I've seen and what I've heard, it's very fucking powerful. Like, we store energy in our nervous system that is pent up there. And my way of healing only works if you're conscious, or you can become conscious of it. Like, if something happened to me, which I guarantee would have happened when I was 6 months old, 2 months old, 2 years old, and my conscious mind hadn't developed enough yet, I won't remember what happened, but my nervous system will. And that's where I believe plant medicines. I do plant medicine. I released a podcast this morning on psychedelics. So I do psychedelics and plant medicines every 3 to 6 months for that reason, to get into that subconscious where it's like you just don't know what you don't know, and that kind of overlaps with like the energy healer. So yeah, kind of a long answer, but my partner does the most mirroring to me, which triggers me the most, so that allows me to do my self-healing through that. I obviously pick up my own medicine when I'm talking to clients, and even on this podcast, and when I'm talking to people. And I'm also now exploring energy healers, because I want to experience that for myself to see what comes up.
That's about as good as an answer you can give, Lewis. We have, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for being open here, being honest, talking about your story and imparting a ton of wisdom to us, and I'm sure our listeners as well. To wrap this up, we've got 3 kind of rapid fire questions for you. The first one is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, or just like your favorite quote?
Tony Robbins, because I heard it so long ago, it's really stuck with me. But your life is a blank canvas, make a masterpiece. I really enjoyed that. So just like, you can make your life whatever you want it to be. So do what you love and love what you do. I
love that. That's beautiful. The next one, if you could have dinner with anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Someone asked me this not too long ago, so I'm going to use the same answer. I'll explain why. I would love to have dinner with Hitler. I would love to actually sit down and understand what the fuck was going on in his mind. Like, what drove him to think the way that he thought. Like, you know how I was saying, what's greater for the whole is greater for the individual. He didn't subscribe to that belief, and he did what he did. So I would love to understand, and what he did without the obviously judgment towards what he did, the scale of what he did is very impressive. Like, to get people to do what he got them to do is leadership at the highest level. Like, so he's got like such strong traits in a empowering way, but the intention and what he did behind it was obviously quite wrong. So yeah, I would love to just understand his mind. I've watched some documentaries on him, because I just find that so fascinating what he did.
He was not in the set, and I've heard him give that same answer.
I've given that answer too. I don't know how you wouldn't be curious enough. And I'm talking like a sit-down conversation with like the person, not like the politician or like the speech version of it. Like, to really dig into what his upbringing consisted of, and connecting those dots. But yeah, I unfortunately misused power to the absolute extent, but
Yeah.
I do share the same, I think, fascination around the scale to which he was able to influence people at the magnitude that he was able to.
Yeah. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
he had
yeah.
so much power. Obviously, the way he used it wasn't great,
Terrible.
but
Yeah, and in today's world where things are short formed and whatnot, I want to be very careful of how we speak about the guy. But anyway, next question.
Lastly, just what do you like to hobbies? What do you like to do in your free time? That kind of question.
Man, like this is where values come into it. Like I just live to my values, man. Like your highest values will require more time than the other ones to fill up. So my highest one's coaching. I do a lot of coaching. I've filmed 10 TikToks today, had a podcast. I've got three 1 hour coaching sessions, and a couple strategy calls, which are sort of sales calls / strategy calls for me. I love my partner. I love learning. I love investing. So I'm a dollar cost average investor. I'm not like an extreme investor, but I just like buying stocks. I love games. I'm a video gamer at heart, so I love games. So I still play a little bit of video games from time to time. Yeah, man, I just live to my values, and you can call those hobbies if you want, but whatever my values. Like, a good question to just ask is when you got nothing on, what would I be inspired to do right now? I did that yesterday at 6 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon. I'm like, fuck, I'm going to go film a podcast. And that's what I decided to do. So I just live to my values, to be honest.
Well, again, Lewis, we really appreciate it. This was a really fun conversation, at least from our perspective. So thanks again. We're going to sign off here.
Thank you, my man.